Thank you. So I'm going to present something about forest genetic monitoring. When has the problem started? What was the introduction, and where something about LIFEGENMON project and where are we going to. My co-authors are all the co-authors also of the LIFEGENMON project, which we have written in around 7 years ago within the previous project of Furino. First, we have to know that biologists and all concerned with biodiversity issues, the majority thinks that biodiversity is, as it is stated at its most basic definition, it's the number of species present. However, it includes also smaller genetic variation and larger scales, such as community, ecosystem, and landscape variation. And also conservation as the science concerned with increasing the probability that the Earth biodiversity at different scales will persist into the future needs to start with genetic diversity, which enables a population and a species to adapt to the changing environments of the uncertain future. Therefore, the entering statement, taking a new step, uttering a new word, is what people fear most, is just aimed at the biologists and conservationists, which usually just think about species diversity. In forestry, conservation of forest genetic resources has started already in the 18th century, when the land races of forest trees have been named. Then at the beginning of the 19th century, the initiation of provenance trials of Scots pine were started by de Vilmorin. And then already at the end of the 19th century, and also again after the First World War, there were large-scale disturbances happened due to the also previous large-scale use of inappropriate forest reproductive material. And that was the time when the importance of the origin of forest reproductive material was noted, which initiated also the establishment of a UFRO session about it, and also that was the initiation of the forest seed orchards in Europe, such as in Denmark in 1926 to 56. Geographical variability of Scots pine in Sweden was also kind of a step towards the new field of ecological genetics, and also around that time forestry breeding was started by initiating seed orchards, defining plus trees, and approving seed stands. Also, provenance trials with non-native spruce provenances in Sweden at that time have already led to the conclusion that native is not always the best. Later on, population and quantitative genetics in forestry was initiated, and also the importance of genetic diversity of forest trees was stated by Jin Nam Kung, Alphonse Nanson, and others in the 70s and 80s. Within the European processes, the origin of forest reproductive material and the organization of production and tracing of forest reproductive material along the production and marketing line was included in the first directive on forest reproductive material in 1966, as well as in the OECD scheme, and then it led to further development of the present directive on marketing of forest reproductive material, which was accepted in 1999. At the department, at FAO, a department on forest genetic resources was active from the 60s, 70s onwards, The expert panels have met every 2 to 4 years. And this department on forest genetic resources, still active at present, was led for a rather long time by Christel Palmberg-Lersch, who initiated the process of preparation of the World Forest Genetic Resources State of the World Forest Genetic Resources reports. Later on, it led also to the global plan of activity. And at the European scale, they initiated the resolutions of the ministerial conferences on protection of forests, now called Forest Europe, to the resolution S2 in Strasbourg and H1 in Helsinki, supporting and initiating the European Program for Forest Genetic Resources, EU4GAIN, which was then founded in 1994. At present, it is in its 6th phase and combines efforts of 28 countries, but at maximum, at some time, it even joined efforts of 41 European countries. Also, other European processes, strategies, and plans have enabled financial support for conservation of forest genetic resources at the national level, and several orders and decrees on harms and on invasive, allochthonous, non-native species and harmful organisms were prepared. So, since 1994, EU4GAIN has been developing its activities all the way to its 6th phase, which is active at present. And already in the 4th steering committee meeting in Židlochovice in 2004, the discussion on a science policy interface was risen. And it was already mentioned that monitoring of forest genetic diversity should be included, if possible, into the existing ICP forest monitoring schemes. In the phase 4, the working group on forest genetic monitoring was active. Its report was finalized in 2015 by Phila Ravanopoulos and others, and it was proposing 3 levels of forest genetic monitoring: basic, standard, and advanced, and listed a set of indicators and verifiers which would still need to be evaluated. And in parallel, also the German group on forest genetic resources has proposed its pilot German forest genetic monitoring design. So, during the centuries in Slovenia, the Slovenian forestry school has been developed. It was based on traditional sustainable forest management. It was traditionally incorporated into Slovenian forestry practice since Maria Theresia's recommendations in the 18th century, and it was already legalized in the Basic Act on Forest in 1964, and is legalized now in the current Forestry Act and in the National Forestry Program. The basis of the Slovenian forestry school is first on the theoretical and phytocenological papers by Max Vraber in the 50s, when he stated that silviculture should be based on forest genetics, and also that biology is the backbone of theoretical and practical forestry. His teaching was implemented into measures for control of the origin and certification of forest reproductive material and conservation of forest genetic resources by Miran Brinar. And then the Slovenian Forestry School was more or less defined by Professor Mlinšek through his free method in silviculture. What does it mean? Sustainable, co-natural, multifunctional forest management implies small-scale, flexible forest management, which is adapted easily to site characteristics and natural development of forests, active protection of natural populations of forest trees, protection and conservation of biological diversity in forests at all different scales, support of the bioecological economical stability by improving the growing stock, tending of all developmental stages and all forest forms in order to fulfill optimally all functions of forests. And natural regeneration is supported in forests, and if seedlings are used, they should derive from adequate seed sources and provenances, and only adequate species can be used. The Slovenian Forestry School learns from the processes which it studies in a network of forest reserve, including several virgin forest reserves. So it's the most prominent irregular shelterwood system was also already proven to be appropriate for conservation of genetic diversity through the generations. However, especially in the last decade, a series of large-scale disturbances, such as ice sleet in 2014, followed by several wind throws in the next few years, and followed by large-scale bark beetle outbreaks, they have shown that the current Slovenian Forestry School does need to improve. It needs to be further developed, since, as we can see here, almost see here, that modeling the simulations of the future distribution of even the mother tree in Slovenia, such as beech, is going to be diminished radically in the future. So how can we further develop the Slovenian Forestry School, including based on the principles defined in Europe? It is through conservation and supporting of biodiversity is different and in different scales. So ecosystem, species, and functional diversity diminish the impacts of stress and disturbances. Genetic diversity ensures that future populations of forest trees can survive, adapt, and evolve in changing environmental conditions, and therefore measures for so-called genetic protection of forests, meaning conservation and supporting of genetic diversity for future generations. So these measures are aimed to support genetic diversity and produce genetically diverse forest reproductive material, which needs to complement natural regeneration and be included in the further development both of the Slovenian Forestry School and of worldwide global efforts for supporting resilient forests for the future. Measures for genetic protection of forests are based on forest genetic monitoring, and they can only be implemented if they are accepted by practice. Therefore, communication to general and target publics need the needs for forest genetic monitoring and measures for genetic protection of forests need to be communicated. It's necessary to develop the positive attitude towards forests and forestry through the whole national education system. We need to formalize the science and communicating science, establish a science policy interface, and combine interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary sciences with practice, including applying several modern tools. And therefore, in 2013, we have proposed, together with the Greek partners leading the working group on forest genetic monitoring in Euphorgin, and together with German partners leading the German forest genetic monitoring approach. We have proposed the first implementation project on forest genetic resources. We named it LIFEGENMON. It's a Life Environmental Fund project, and it is based on the principle that forest genetic monitoring can act as an early warning system to aid the assessment of a species' response to environmental change at a long-term temporal scale. It combines 6 partners from 3 countries, Germany, Bavaria, Slovenia, and Greece. The partners are listed here. It is a 6.5 years project, but since forest genetic resources do not know borders, it aims also and it includes also participation and contributions of the experts, and we call them national focal points, from the transect countries between Bavaria and Greece. And this Balkan area is also known as the European biodiversity hotspot. Besides, we also include in the advisory board elected members from the EUFORGAN steering committee in order to support better spread and discussion of all our outputs, reasoning and outreach. And it also includes representatives from the ministries responsible for forestry from Slovenia, Bavaria, and Greece. The implementation actions are based on implementation from the field to the lab and to evaluation of the cost benefit of all the activities. We have prepared a manual for forest genetic monitoring, which defines indicators and verifiers, protocols, collections, databases, and costs for obtaining each of them. Then we are just finalizing the decision support system, so it compiles the decision support tool, which provides the cost benefit part, and then the whole system includes also the possibility to support national decision makers in the 3 partner and in the transit countries to define the level of forest genetic monitoring based on needs and means. The guidelines have been developed for 7 forestry species: Abies alba, Abies borisii regis complex, Fagus sylvatica, Fraxinus excelsior, Pinus nigra, Populus nigra, Prunus avium, and Quercus petrea robur complex. They will be presented later on also as posters. Communication is an important part of the all LIFE projects, and especially of LIFEGENMON. It is providing to raise the awareness of forest genetic resources and biodiversity. It starts with books for children, Forest of Experiments, Handbook for Learning and Play in the Forest. We have prepared several documentaries, movies, cartoons, and so on, organized summer school conferences, workshops, monographs, thematic issues of journals, and the social media portal Knowledge for Forests is hopefully working. The workshops were aimed first for Forest Service and other stakeholders at the national level in each of the partner countries. For example, in Slovenia, we hold workshops on forest genetic resources, seeds and seedlings, forest nurseries, tending of forest seed stands, implementation of forest genetic monitoring into legislation practice. We have organized several sessions at 2 big UFRO congresses in 2017 in Freiburg and in 2019 in Brazil. And also we have organized in the transect countries a series of 5 different workshops presenting guidelines for forest genetic monitoring system and defining the roles and the ways of how to include forest genetic monitoring into their national legislation, as well as how to allow forest reproductive material from these countries to be transferred and used for future forests in the adequate sites in, for example, in Slovenia, in the European countries. Our present aims are mostly oriented towards the afterlife communication plan. First, through a series of monographs and presentations. So we have contributed to the Springer monograph on forest genetic resources in Southeastern Europe, finalizing some national thematic monographs such as Siforgen and the SEEDS practicum. We are contributing to thematic international publications, such as Euphorgen reports, preparation of the Euphorgen forest genetic resources strategy, and also preparing the thematic issues of selected high-ranking international journals, such as Forests and Frontiers. So we have organized these 2 sessions and UFRA congresses, prepared policy leaflets, media streamlines, also the Interproject workshop in Brussels, contributed to the COP24 in Katowice, and so on. The communication plan for the period after the end of the LIFEGENMON projects includes extended dissemination of project results by the portal. The guidelines shall be disseminated and translated into other national languages, and a discussion at Euphorgen Steering Committee is proposed on the guidelines and the manual and the decision support system, and their possible translation and setup of working group is proposed on implementation of forest genetic monitoring in the transect countries. Also trainings in the other countries for better understanding of forest genetic monitoring manual is envisioned. Several cost actions on forest genetic monitoring. Several cost actions include also parts on forest genetic monitoring. We hope that indicators will be upgraded if new knowledge develops based on technological advance. The decision support system will consider possible upgrading needed if the costs per any level of monitoring or budget available for forest genetic monitoring changes. And the afterlife communication plan shall also contain a list of papers published, submitted, and under preparation with the expected dates of the expected final publication. Versatile, flexible, country-specific action plan for conservation and monitoring of forest genetic resources has been proposed, and so it's flexible, it's due to continuous upgrading. The establishment of or evaluation of the national control system regarding the origin and category of forest reproductive material in the non-EU and non-OECD countries needs to be well checked, prepared. We have also proposed a new UFRO session on forest genetic monitoring, which has also been accepted. As said, collaboration in different cost actions relevant for forest genetic monitoring and conservation of forest genetic resources. We are aiming at collaboration in one already accepted new Horizon project, and proposing to go for new partnership project proposals in the new schemes, especially those on both on biodiversity and those on monitoring. So this was roughly and briefly the presentation of the past and present and the future of forest genetic monitoring from its very beginning through Euphorgen working groups, through the first life implementation project, contributing to the EU4GEN needs and actions and goals. And also, we hope that also the afterlife communication plan will go as smoothly as LIFEGENMON so far. Thank you.